The tower grew taller than the World Trade Center, taller than Moscow's Ostankino Tower. Now nearing completion, the CN Tower is more than 1,800 feet high. It'll provide improved TV reception for the Toronto area. The tower has an observation deck and boasts the world's highest revolving restaurant more than 1,100 feet up. The freezing rain and high winds of Toronto provided architects with one towering problem: how to avoid severe icing on the steel structure. The tower's shape and its special slippery surface are designed to keep icing to an absolute minimum. The CN Tower, more than 1,800 feet high, the tallest freestanding structure in the world.
Wow, that's fantastic. Who's the guy that changes the light bulb on top, huh? Well, a bird named Pine Needle who
demands too much of the driver's attention. Walking is impossible, and the city certainly can't be seen from public transportation. So how do you see the city? Bill Applegate reports on one unexpected answer.
The front lawn of the Federal Building in West LA seems an unlikely place to camp out. But one look at the modernistically designed and brightly colored tents tells you right away that this is no ordinary camping trip. What it is a class project by 30 freshman students at the Southern California Institute of Architecture. The nylon tents were all individually designed and constructed by the students. And now, as the culmination of their many weeks of design work, they are off on a 7-day bicycle excursion of the city, stopping each night at a different location to erect their futuristic community. Last night, they slept in the shadow of the giant stone-faced Federal Building, and the architectural comparison is part of the lesson.
Well, we're trying to get the student to actually think anew. In other words, if we tell him to do building from the beginning, he thinks building and he has predetermined ideas already about what he conceives as a building, whereas a tent, he doesn't have these preconceived ideas, and he's much more, they are, because we have females as well, they are much more oriented towards experimenting and trying out new things and working better creatively, we feel.
It's time now for the students to take down their tents and get ready to move on to the next location. They'll be touring the city by bicycle for the rest of this week, stopping each night to erect their colorful tent city. They hope to learn something about the city where they live, and in the process, maybe discover some new ways to live. This is Bill Applegate, Channel 2 News in West Los Angeles.
And there's more news ahead. The federal government promises as fast
What it'll be like. One thing that's noticed right away is that the ride is very smooth, very quiet. That's because the rails are on rubber cushions. When finished, the nearly $3 billion system with more than 500 air-conditioned cars will carry commuters to and from Washington to stations in Maryland and Virginia. It's expected by 1990, the metro rail system in the nation's capital will be carrying 350 million riders a year. Joe Templeton, ABC News, Washington.
And coming up next on Eyewitness News, the mystery over a man killed in his car and the controversy.
Excuse me, sir. Hi. What do you do for a living?
I'm a brain surgeon.
Yes. We're asking TV experts like yourself which of these colored TVs you prefer.
That one.
Because it doesn't take an electronics wizard to see the difference in ours.
That one.
Uh-huh. Can you read the name on the set?
MGA.
Right.
Unga?
MGA. And another TV expert picks MGA.
But what's an Unga?
Well, this is the year I turned 40. I could have had it made by...
Small and light, but it pulls its weight.
Another bomb has exploded in Miami, Florida. That's the 7th in less than 24 hours. The latest was on the 2nd floor of Miami Police Headquarters. It's especially heavy around all federal buildings. Well, Bob Dunn took a trip to Lafayette Park in Los Angeles today, and it may well have been a trip into the future. He saw the latest in inflatable products, something that may show up in the architecture of tomorrow.
It looks like something you might expect to find at the end of the yellow brick road in the land of Oz. You might expect Dorothy and Toto to pop out of here any minute. But actually, it's an inflatable tent, and it was constructed by a student as part of an architectural class project.
30 first-year students at the Southern California Institute of Architecture in Santa Monica were given 6 weeks to create a tent or shelter supported solely by air. That's apparently not too easy, as only 6 of the 30 showed up with tents at the rendezvous point at Lafayette Park. They came in weird shapes and employed such things as bicycle tubes, air mattresses, and other scientifically designed inflatable supports, and gaily colored parachute cloth to form a shelter. Each has a round entry hole for the purpose of attaching it to a great big communal plastic bag filled with air. When there was insufficient wind to operate the windmill air pump designed by the students, they had to resort to a 2-year-old die-hard battery to puff up the living room area. One good feature of the inflatable tents, they move easily from one campsite to another. In fact, in a Santa Ana wind like we had in the valley last week, the entire inflatable Odyssey might move from Chatsworth to Thousand Oaks overnight. But the young aspiring architects found the experiment worthwhile.
It looks like someday air may eventually replace the tent pole, and all you need is a little imagination and one good air mattress pump, and you're in business. This is Bob Dunn reporting from Lafayette Park.
That's wild. From architecture, we move on to the weather, and today's weather is a bit of a trade-off. Better elsewhere in the country, somewhat, but not quite so good in Southern California. Rain and flooding have subsided just
across the United States of America starting at 6:06 in the morning, New York time, this date, June the 18th, so we'll go down there and find out how that is going to work. Here at the outset, I told a story.
NBC announces for Thursday night or Friday morning, July 4th, 1975, a Tomorrow Show special, commencing at 1 a.m. Eastern and Pacific, midnight Central, for 6 hours. Join Tom Snyder in welcoming the bicentennial with his guests in New York City, plus live cut-ins from London, Las Vegas, New England, and Atlanta. The Tomorrow Show, July 4th, 6 hours, live here on NBC.
Still, it's Frank Shorter. Number 36 coming into the picture there. Christopher Wardlaw of Australia in the yellow shirt. That sure looks like number 27. Out in front has to be, but that should be Jack Foster, so it can't be.
It's not Jack Foster, that's for sure.
No, Jack Foster's in a black shirt. Okay, it's 37. That's exactly who it is. It's Jerome Drayton, the long-lost Jerome Drayton, has returned to the field and is leading the race.
Exactly where he always is. Now look at this man. He's either going to kill himself or kill the others.
Remember, Canada has yet to win a gold medal in these Olympics. No host country has ever gone through an entire game without winning a gold medal. This looks like their only chance.
Jim, this may be a petty point, but anybody who's wearing socks, as we just saw close.
Make this an exciting summer. Plan now to attend a Campfire Girls Camp. Make new friends and have fun like the girls shown here. Girls from ages 6 to 17 years are welcome at Campfire Camps. They're accredited by American Camping Association. Call your closest Campfire office for more information.
The Sawdust Festival of Arts and Crafts is...
Hello and welcome to Saturday. I'm Nicole Pierce.
And I'm Frank Kwan, and today we've got a special program for you on the arts, and we're here at the Los Angeles Ballet.
We're coming to you today not only live from our studios at NBC in Burbank, but live from Century City.
Holter has as her guest in the studio Glen Small, professor at the Southern California Institute of Architecture, and who has some very definite opinions about architecture in Southern California. Peggy?
Thank you very much, Cal. Welcome to Saturday, Glenn. You have some definite opinions. We've been looking at Century City today. What do you think of Century City?
Oh, I think they had an opportunity to do something really nice there, because they started off with virgin land, but what they ended up with is a very commercial, fascist, monumental piece of architecture.
Fascist? How do you define fascist in architecture?
Well, it's really trying to be ostentatious and making the person feel dwarfed in terms of their scale to different things. In other words, they really aren't interacting with the person.
But how else do you solve the problem of having to put a lot of people together in a small area in offices?
Well, there's many ways to do it. I don't think Los Angeles has the opportunity to see all the different ways. If you go to Europe, there's lots of high-density areas that are very pleasant and diversified and have a lot of interest.
You know, one of the diversified things that you did with your first-year design students was take them up to Habitat, which is where we first met, with what some people might think is an alternative kind of structure, and we shot some film up there of that, and maybe we'll look at that right now and be able to see exactly what one of your ideas of alternative architecture is. So let's look at that film. Here it is. At the Habitat Forum, you put up this, really what looked like a two-humped tent. It was designed by your first-year students and powered by this windmill.
Yeah, this is a hydraulic windmill. Actually, it was on a trailer, and the students pulled it up behind a van all the way to Vancouver.
What's different about it being hydraulic?
Well, it means that it's telescopic. It can go up and down. Therefore, you can adjust it so where the best wind currents are, and it picks them up.
Oh, so it's not fixed at any special height?
No, you can move it around.
Oh, I see, and that provided really the power for the Habitat tent. One of the things that I was wondering about is, what was it made of?
It's made of a vinyl.
Vinyl, and the students actually designed it, cut it out, and sewed it together themselves?
We had a competition among the first-year students, and a woman won, Claire Pollock, and then all the students chipped in and helped build it, and this is the end result.
But how does something like this, which is kind of, some people might think backward in a way because it looks a lot like an Indian teepee, how is this an architecture solution for the world's housing problems?
Well, this is called a minimum structure. In other words, it's getting its maximum strength from using a minimum amount of material, and as our resources become less and less, we will find that we'll go to things like tents and so on, where this is just an example of something more to come in the future. In other words, if we had a thermo skin on that in conjunction with the vinyl, then it would start to act as a more permanent building.
Speaking of permanent buildings, you're going to take that, aren't you, to some other parts of the world where, like I think down to Guatemala, didn't you say?
Well, that was in the works now. It's not really. It was in the, sort of for the disaster area, and there's been some economic delays on that.
But a tent like that really wouldn't be very suitable for some parts of the world where it gets quite cold, even with a thermal covering, would it? Doesn't it seem a little wide open?
Well, it was designed to actually have more enclosure about it. It was to be completely closed off, and the students didn't get quite around to that.
Do you think we're ever going to live in something like that here in Southern California?
It's hard to say. I think Southern California is retarded in this area. I think we're representing sort of the commercial base for the world. In other words, the world looks at us as a commercial success, and the problems of the world are not commercial right now, they're ecological. And so when you start to think in terms of ecological systems, then you're going to start to think of minimum structures like this represents. And so if we can get the students thinking this way, eventually, hopefully, they'll design larger scale structures that demonstrate this.
So what you're saying really is that these are people who are going to go out and design for the world, but that in terms of what we're looking at here in Los Angeles, it's really not where we're going.
Not now, no, not at all. I mean, we're so far away from it. I think we'll be the last to go.
And we're going to maintain the kinds of look that we have now?
I think it'll get worse. I think the cars will get heavier and more jammed together, and the buildings will get taller and more dense, and the smog's going to get greater, and so on. There's nothing stopping it here.
You said before that Century City didn't provide for any interaction between the people and the structures. If you were given a project like that, what would you do with it?
Well, it's hard to say. I'd have to show you visually, but I can do it.
Would it be low-rise or more spread out? How?
Well, I have a whole project which I call a biomorphic biosphere, which incorporates all the rules that nature has sort of set up in designing it. Collects its own water, recycles, grows its own food. Looks like the inside looks like being inside of a big glass house with all plants and so on, things like this. And it has parks and waterfalls, and it's delightful. It's very, very people-oriented, but yet in tune with nature.
But it's not a very high-density kind of structure.
Oh yes, we're talking about 11 million, which is it would take the place of Los Angeles.
In what kind of? Oh, you mean right in the same basic structure that we have in Los Angeles? We could fit 11 million people?
No. I didn't really want to get into this, but it actually transforms Los Angeles through a transition period of taking buildings down and starting to build this new.
Is that what we're going to have to do here eventually, is take the buildings down?
I don't know what we're going to have to do. I think people result to catastrophe. And it's too bad, because I think if you think about something intelligently, then you can start to take steps to plan for the future, which would lead you to sort of this ecological balance that I'm talking about. But people react to disaster, and I think we're going to be the last to react because everything's so comfortable here.
We're going to be the last people to have a disaster.
Right.
Okay, thank you very much, Glenn. And Cal, back to you.
Thank you, Peggy. I certainly hope we're not the last ones, you know. Well, stay with us because we have more on Saturday. We're going to have a special report from out at Century City on the hardest tickets to get right after this word.
That lion cut me so far.
Of course. Everything you're watching is live. Right now, the exuberation of the American relay team, 4x100, which has just buried the rest of the field to really get things off to a smashing start. When I say get things off, remember, the marathon is still underway, and American is leading in that. In the high jump, the competition continues, and Dwight Stones is in very good shape. The other two Americans are out. But now, Frank Shorter appeared to be breaking away from the pack, but Voldemar Cierpinski, the young man from Halle, East Germany, age 25, has decided not to let Frank go. Now, Eric, do you know enough about Cierpinski's style to know whether this is too much for him to keep up, or what?
Cierpinski is a converted 10,000-meter man, and his time at 10,000 meters is fully a minute slower than Frank Shorter. He's one of those guys who moved up because he wasn't fast enough. Frank is so much faster than he is that he could dust him off at any time. The important thing to see at this point, Jim, is that Lasse Viren is nowhere in sight. He couldn't keep up this pace. I think he's learned a little bit of a lesson. They're running at better than 2:10 for a marathon pace. Viren is out of sight, absolutely out of sight.
Yes, he is. He's fallen at least several hundred yards behind, and so has Bill Rogers at this point. There's Rogers way, way back in the red shirt. Still can't see Viren anywhere in the picture, and we can see back now, as you can see, about 200 yards, and one would doubt that he is holding back that far on purpose.
Absolutely not. I think he's out of it. I think this is the hill that we've heard so much about. This looks like the viaduct. Jim,
I'm not
to
sure.
me.
The Rockland Overpass, I don't think they've gotten that far yet.
No,
I think they're around Lacadie Circle. They're just moving into that.
It's just another uphill.
Yep.
But I would not worry about Cierpinski for the moment, although he has been a comer this past year and has improved with every race.
They're running along Lacadie Boulevard, as you see. It's a great, broad, wide-open dual highway, and the crowds begin to grow. Wait until we get downtown, and you see the people on Sherbrooke Street, and then when they come into the Olympic Stadium. But it's Shorter the American and Cierpinski. Here's a look ahead. This is a hill that lies ahead of them at about 19 miles, right?
Well, it's just before the 18-mile mark, and it's just when runners start asking themselves existential questions. They've got no energy left, and they say, what am I doing here? And they pray for downhill, but this time they're going to get uphill. Frank said that if there were anyone near him at this point, he would make a move.
Look at that. The block by spectators is where it really goes up. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. There it is, up and over the Rockland Overpass. But that's well ahead of them. That's well ahead of them now. Here's where they are. And moving into contention, number 64 is Shivnath Singh of India.
Who could well be the Baby Bakila of Montreal, because I've never heard of him.
You have not even heard of him. Okay, so we have what every marathon seems to come up with, the outsider in the field. We've had our look at the great Viren trying his first marathon, at Drayton trying to win for Canada. And we see in front now Shorter trying for his second in a row, and Cierpinski, the East German, trying to give further evidence that the East Germans are here to stay in just about any sport you can name. Now, there is Frank. He wears special pads, by the way, when he runs, doesn't he, Eric?
Yes, he does, and it helps him to do what he has just done. He has picked up the pace to 4:55 a mile, and this Cierpinski cannot take for very long. Frank is really trying to break the race wide open. My utter astonishment is that this gentleman Singh is where he is.
Shivnath Singh of India. What a story he could be, but he looks like he's laboring, but on the other hand, Emil Zatopek always looked that way.
Absolutely. Now look, Jim, Jerome Drayton is out of sight.
Yep.
Bill Rogers is out of sight. It's only Cierpinski and Shorter, really, because as you say, Singh really is hurting. And Frank has broke this race wide open. Whether he's broken Cierpinski is another matter.
Do these men have any idea whether they're running and averaging 4:55 miles or 4:58 miles or 5-minute miles?
That's a marathoner's job, Jim, to know exactly how fast he's going.
Okay, well, the Indian, as you can see, is well within striking distance in third place, and I can't make out the man who is fourth. Now, that could still be Drayton.
But he's got a long distance to get up.
Okay, more action in the track and field stadium. 75,000 people gathered, and here's Keith.
Well, Jim, we want to go back in slow motion to show the passes of the winning American team. O.J. Simpson with me. Let's have a look at that first pass now. It looked all right from where we sat, O.J.
I consider it a safe pass. They're in lane 2, as you can see in the middle with the red top and blue shorts. And as you see, Glance is right next to Johnny Jones. It shouldn't be. It should be some extension there. There's very little extension there. It could have been a lot better. You should have been able to see some room between the two of them. But it was a safe pass, and here's when our team started making up the time anyway.
And the soft rain is continuing to fall here at a 38.34 run in the rain. I think in good dry conditions it might very well have been into the 37s for the American team. And now here is the last pass as Hampton, the man who made such a difference in the race, as he comes down off the curb with a good pass to Riddick.
Yeah, this is an excellent pass. Hampton is a strong finisher. He's a 200 man. You see that? Riddick spent very little time holding his hand back. The minute he had his hand back there, Hampton had it in his hand and he was running.
And look at that marvelous fluid stride of Riddick. Whew. He really reaches. That's what you call pulling for home. 38.34. That's what you did. The Soviet Union, incidentally, was third, as we called it. Dwight Stones now standing undercover, waiting to come back to the high jump. He is over at 7.3. Allman has gone out. And so now we have lost another man at 7.3, and it's been a long time, almost 3/4 of an hour, roughly, since Dwight Stones has come back to compete. It just seems a very difficult thing, Bob Sigmund, to hold your concentration that long, as we now have only 4 men left, and it'll get a little better.
Well, the time span between jumps is what's tough, you know, because you stand around, you cool off, and you got a lot of time to think about what you want to do. You burn up nervous energy, and then when it comes time to jump again, you got to warm up all over again. You burn up more energy, and it does. It has an effect on you. It starts to tiring you out. Right now, they're down there. They're taking the water off. You can see puddles of water gathering on the track down here, and they've been taking towels and squeegees, trying to get the high jump area, get the water off it, so it makes it safer for these athletes to jump. You can see the squeegees here. And
that's exactly what he was grumbling about, which really got him in trouble with some of the Quebec press, because he was under the impression they were to have a roof on the place and there wouldn't be any trouble with the weather. But as a result of it, we had a sort of a